He stood up to one of the most powerful leaders in the world, defended the dignity of his people, and made history. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso boldly rejected Emmanuel Macron's disrespect. And what happened next changed everything. In his country, a young leader was emerging in Burkina Faso. His name was Ibrahim Traoré, and the people looked to him for change. For years, the country had suffered under corrupt leaders, while foreign powers controlled much of its economy. The people were fed up. They longed for a leader who would fight for them, someone unafraid to challenge the systems that had held them back for so long. Ibrahim Traoré was that leader. He wasn't born into power, but he had something far more powerful, a deep love for his country and an unshakable determination to see it rise. When he came into office, hope returned. Electricity began flowing into homes. Schools improved, and corrupt politicians who had stolen from the people were being prosecuted. It felt like the beginning of a new era in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim worked tirelessly, determined that his people would feel the change. Under his leadership, pride was restored. The days of living in the shadow of foreign control were ending. Burkina Faso was reclaiming its independence, and the people stood ready to support their leader, no matter the cost. But just as things were improving, a challenge came from outside. French President Emmanuel Macron planned a visit to Burkina Faso. He had visited Africa before, but his trips were often seen as condescending. And this time, his words sparked even more controversy. Ibrahim Traoré was about to face a test, one that would reveal whether he truly had the courage to defend his people's dignity. As news of Macron's visit spread, reactions were divided. Some people saw a potential opportunity for better relations, while others remembered his previous remarks, comments many found deeply disrespectful. During one visit, Macron had said, "If the people of Burkina Faso don't have electricity, I'm not responsible." To many Africans, especially in Burkina Faso, those words stung. It felt like he was blaming them for their own suffering, as if the failures of past governments were their fault. Ibrahim Traoré understood the painful history between Africa and France. For centuries, colonial powers had ruled over African nations. Even after independence, many countries remained under foreign influence, especially from France. While France was seen as a strategic partner, it was also a reminder of colonialism and exploitation. From the beginning of his presidency, Ibrahim made it clear his country would no longer live in that shadow. He had already been working to restore the dignity of his people. Electricity was reaching homes, infrastructure was improving, and accountability was being enforced. But Macron's earlier comments remained an open wound. They weren't just insulting, they revealed how foreign powers still looked down on Africans. Ibrahim couldn't ignore that. When he learned that Macron still intended to visit, he made a bold decision. He would not allow the French president to come to Burkina Faso unless he first showed proper respect to its people. Ibrahim understood that he wasn't just protecting his country's honor. He was standing for the dignity of Africa as a whole. He knew the visit could be more than just a diplomatic trip. It could either promote mutual respect or prove that Africa was still being treated as inferior. And so, he took a stand. Ibrahim picked up the phone and called Macron directly. It was a bold move, but he was a man of principle. The conversation lasted an hour. From the beginning, Ibrahim was direct and firm. "You insulted my people," he told Macron. "You said you weren't responsible for their electricity. But now that I'm president, we are working to rebuild. Our people have electricity. They see the change. Politicians who steal are going to prison. This is a new Burkina Faso." Macron tried to justify himself, but Ibrahim stood firm. He told Macron that his visit would not be welcome unless he showed genuine respect to the people of Burkina Faso. This wasn't about politics. It was about dignity. Ibrahim made it clear, if Macron truly wanted to be an ally of Burkina Faso, he needed to treat them as equals, not as people who needed to be rescued or reformed. For nearly an hour, the two leaders spoke, but Ibrahim's words remained strong and unwavering. He stood for his people and reminded Macron that Burkina Faso was no longer the country it once was. By the end of the conversation, Macron acknowledged Ibrahim's stance, but it was clear he would not be visiting Burkina Faso. News of the exchange spread quickly across the streets of Ouagadougou. The people rejoiced. Ibrahim Traoré had stood up to one of the world's most influential leaders and defended the pride of his nation. He had shown the world that Africa would no longer accept disrespect or dismissal. It was a moment of triumph, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire African continent. However, the story didn't end there. While the people of Burkina Faso were celebrating, a new twist emerged. Alassane Ouattara, the president of Ivory Coast, contacted Macron shortly after his call with Ibrahim. Ouattara extended an invitation, saying, "You are welcome here." This move was seen by many as a betrayal. People in Burkina Faso and beyond were outraged. They felt that Ouattara, long criticized for his close alignment with Western powers, had abandoned the spirit of African unity. To them, Ouattara's invitation symbolized submission. He was seen as someone who would serve foreign interests, rather than stand up for Africa's dignity. Ibrahim's strong position in facing Macron only emphasized the stark contrast between bold independent leadership and those still tied to the agendas of former colonial powers. The people viewed Ibrahim as a brave leader committed to Africa's future, while Ouattara was seen as a man willing to trade Africa's independence for his own political gain. This moment of defiance against Macron became a turning point. It reminded Burkina Faso citizens and Africans across the continent that their voice and pride mattered. Ibrahim Traoré had shown that African dignity could not be bought, dismissed, or ignored. The struggle for freedom and respect was ongoing. But with leaders like Ibrahim, people felt empowered to reclaim their destiny. In the days that followed, Burkina Faso was filled with emotion. The people praised Ibrahim's courageous stand, recognizing the strength it took to defend their dignity. It felt like a fresh start for a country long burdened by foreign influence. The victory was more than political, it was symbolic. It proved that Africa could no longer be seen as weak or controllable. Yet, in the midst of celebration, the feeling of betrayal lingered. While Burkina Faso citizens stood with their president, Alassane Ouattara had turned to Macron with open arms. His words, "You are welcome here," echoed like a wound across the continent. For many, this was a betrayal of everything Ibrahim had fought for. They saw Ouattara as a puppet, someone more interested in pleasing Western leaders than defending African sovereignty. To them, he had chosen submission over solidarity. The disappointment wasn't limited to Burkina Faso. Across Africa, people expressed frustration and anger. How could a leader claim to represent his people, yet welcome the very person who had insulted their neighbors? It seemed Ouattara had aligned himself with the same powers that had exploited Africa for generations, instead of supporting those who sought independence and unity. In Ouagadougou, the mood was tense but resolute. People knew their fight wasn't over. But with Ibrahim leading, they believed Africa could rise.